Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm Richard Dasher. I direct the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center at Stanford University. We're very happy to welcome you to the closing keynote session in our series of public seminars on mobility, how Asia moving forward in the 21st century, in the fourth industrial revolution, is going to impact all of us. Today, for our kind of conversation to have about the mobility in Asia, we're delighted to be able to welcome Tung, who is one of the managing partners of GGV Capital. Hans is one of the top international investors in Silicon Valley. He is on the Forbes Midas List just about every year for the last 9 or 10 years. And he is also rated the third most successful venture capital investor and called kind of the international VC in this year's Forbes list. Before I complete my introduction of Hans, though, I want to say thanks to the member companies of the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center. They are our primary source of financial support, and so it's because of them that we can bring you this series. Also want to say thank you to the staff of the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center who have made this program possible. And also want to thank the students who've registered for this as a 4-credit course at Stanford University. So I'm behind on my comments, don't worry. I will get to you in the next day or two if there's any problems. Otherwise, you can assume that I am getting all your comments and I will reply. I have a request for you, the students. Please do fill out the online course evaluation form. This is very important to Stanford's evaluation of us. It's also very important to our planning for the future. And we want to make sure that these seminars are giving the best quality and best kind of experience possible to all concerned. So as I mentioned, today our speaker is Hans Tung. Hans is really focusing on early stage investments across the globe. His portfolio includes 18 companies valued at more than $1 billion. He has invested in Affirm, Airbnb, ByteDance, Peloton, StockX, and Wish. One of his early investments was early stage seed investment in Xiaomi. He also oversees GGV Capital's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And he's co-host of the podcast Evolving for the Next Billion. And we hope to encourage everyone to watch this too. Thank you so much for joining us today, for finding time in your busy schedule. I think you have a few prepared remarks to start with.
Yeah, I should have a deck. Thank you, Professor Dasher, and also thank you, Kimberly, for organizing this. Really appreciate it, the chance to have this dialogue. I think I'll just go ahead and share screen. I took the liberty to edit the title a little bit and make it more global. As Professor Dasher said, I'm a sort of global VC based in Silicon Valley, and I invest in the US, Latin America, India, look at opportunities in Southeast Asia as well. I'm not investing actively in China anymore, but we have a lot of colleagues who still do invest in China from being there. So I changed the title to Beyond What Asian Mobility Means for US Businesses, taking lessons almost globally to see the parallel and the connection in the sharing of ideas and business models and talent across the border. So I'm doing this from Silicon Valley, not far from Stanford, where I was on campus from 89 to 93, and those were 4 of the most wonderful years of my life as well. So a bit about a bit advertisement of GGV first, who we are. We started in 2000 with roots in Singapore and Silicon Valley. And we're in our 3rd decade, the beginning of the 3rd decade. First decade, we raised about $1 billion. Second decade, we raised about $8 billion. So really benefit from the rise of mobile internet globally, specifically starting with US and China, and then expanded into Southeast Asia, Latin America, and India as well. Today, we have just a bit over 9 billion under management. We have almost 80 companies that are homegrown, are unicorns, of which 45 are homegrown from early stage. Right now, over 400 companies in our portfolio and 552 IPOs today. In our last 2 years alone, we had close to 20 IPOs. So just a lot of activities, especially in the last 5 years. The logos you see are some of the names that we have invested. And so it has been fun investing in most of them early and growing up with them. We have a team of 6 partners. I myself is a Taiwanese American. I was born in Taiwan, came to the US when I was 13 years old, grew up in LA, and had the fortune of coming to Stanford in '89. And obviously, by the time I was on campus on my way out, that's when Netscape started. And we have browser, and then you have obviously Yahoo being born here on this campus. So just being the right place at the right time, and that changed sort of the rest of my career. Ends up being a lot more tech oriented than I thought it would be. We have 2 other colleagues who are from Singapore originally, Jixun Fu and Jenny Lee. Jixun just had an IPO today through SPAC by the name of Grab. Grab is a super app from Southeast Asia, doing extremely well. So we'll chat a bit more about what Grab is later on in the presentation. I have 2 other colleagues here who are in Silicon Valley with me, Glenn and Jeff. Both of them are really good in enterprise space investing. Glenn on infrastructure, Jeff on SMB tech, and a sort of convergence of consumer and enterprise. And Eric's based in Shanghai. We are investor with focused by sector. I spend a lot of my time on the social internet, kind of consumer internet space, and some kind of smart tech as well. And each of our colleagues have us for center of gravity in one of the 3. And from that, we share knowledge globally. So we believe that you used to be investing early. You want to be very local and only focus on the best founders you need in one city. Over the last 2-3 decades, things have evolved. Now, as you will see from later on in the presentation, we're seeing a lot more business models that are happening in one place first, getting proven, and then start spreading in other places to people learn from what's working, and then figure out how to localize that business model that's proven in one country for their local environment. So there's a high degree of learning, being inspired, and also a high degree of local adaptation and making changes that make sense for your own local market, your local needs. So there's a lot of sharing going on. We thought it will be better served, not organized geographically, but organized by sector, and share knowledge that way to help us to spot trends and be able to make decisions hopefully quicker, faster, and understanding along the way the local differences that we need to account for when we do this. First of all, the first lesson I would like to sort of share from Asia, and that we have seen it working in other markets as well, is the concept of super app. I will start with a video first. This is a video that was done by New York Times, 2 reporters from New York Times back in 2016.
If you're sitting in the United States or Europe right now, you've probably never used a Chinese app. But the reality is, if you want to know how the internet will develop, China, the land once known for its cheap ripoffs, has actually become a guide to the future. You know, the internet is the internet. But for China, the internet is more like an intranet. It's largely walled off from the Western world by this incredibly complex system of filters and blocks that we call the Great Firewall. And basically, the Great Firewall blocks any foreign site the Communist Party doesn't think it can control. So that means there is no Facebook, no Twitter, no Google. Instead, what filled the internet vacuum was a generation of Chinese copycats that have grown into huge companies. So for Google, you had Baidu. For YouTube, you had Youku. For Twitter, you had Sina Weibo, and the list goes on and on. It's almost as if the Chinese internet is a lagoon as an aside to the greater ocean of the internet. And in that lagoon, there are these swamp monster apps that bear some resemblance to the creatures in the ocean, but are mutated in some ways because they evolved in a different kind of environment. But things have started to shift in the sense that before, no one outside of the group really cared about the swamp monsters. But now all of a sudden, some of the features they've developed are so amazing that Western apps are trying to copy them. And the greatest example of this is WeChat. WeChat is an example of, for lack of a better word, a super app. It's a Swiss Army knife that basically does everything for you. It's your WhatsApp, Facebook, Skype, and Uber. It's your Amazon, Instagram, Venmo, and Tinder. But it's other things we don't even have apps for. There are hospitals that have built out whole appointment booking systems. There are investment services. There are even heat maps that show how crowded a place is, be it your favorite shopping mall or a popular tourist site. The list of services goes on basically forever. But it's not the variety of things you can do on WeChat that makes it so powerful. It's the fact that they're all in one app. So why does that matter? Hypothetically, imagine you're sitting at home and one day you notice your corgi is dirty. You open WeChat, hit a few buttons, and a few hours later, a man shows up at your door with some shampoo and a big bag. You want this clean and you look cool. You take a photo, you share it with your friends, and tag dog cleaning business. You haven't left the app. Your friend who likes Hello Kitty and works a boring office job is slacking off at work and looking at WeChat. She sees the photo of your clean corgi. She decides she wants her poodle cleaned. She clicks the tag on your photo and orders the same service. Within seconds, the man with the big vacuum is on his way to her house. She pays him, and he's happy because he got paid instantly on WeChat. She starts chatting with you to thank you. Neither of you have left the app. While chatting, she tells you about a new hip noodle joint. She says, you have to come. It's a schlep, but you accept. She orders food while still at her desk. You order a taxi. She pays for the food. On the way to her house, the man with the big vacuum invests the money he earned from both of you into a wealth management product that's probably a little too risky. Neither of you nor the man with the big vacuum have left the app. Both of you arrive and the app tells the kitchen you're there. Your WeChat profile photo pops up on the left. It's an old photo from the year you had that weird part in your hair. Of course she makes a comment. Your food is served. You notice your meat is a bit overcooked, so you snap a photo and post a disparaging restaurant review. You're already on your phone, and you remember you still owe your friend money because she paid and transfer her money. Neither of you, the man with the big vacuum, nor the restaurant, have left the app. At the restaurant, there are no menus, there are no waiters, there is no cashier. There is only WeChat. By rolling so many functions into one single app, it's altered the concept of virality. It's no longer just videos or images or tweets that can go viral. It's a dog washer, noodles, all sorts of companies and products that get the push of the social network. Here in China, that network is 700 million people. Sounds great, right? Well, it is, but using a single app to find a date, schedule an oil change, or notarize a document also enables WeChat to collect a staggering volume of personal data. They know what you talk about, who you talk about it with, what you read, where you go, why you're going there, who's there, how you spend money when you're online, how you spend money when you're offline. The list goes on indefinitely. For advertisers, this is a miracle. It's the combined data of Facebook, Amazon, Google, and PayPal, all in one place. The problem is, all of the data is information Chinese companies are forced to share with the Chinese government, which has a long record of human rights violations, and isn't exactly shy about stalking its citizens. If you're not in China, why does this matter? It matters because we're starting to see a number of Western tech companies attempt to replicate super apps like WeChat. For the companies, it's incredibly powerful. And for you and me, it's convenient and even transformative technology. But of course, it could also be problematic. Concentrating so much data in so few hands could lay the groundwork for an Orwellian world where companies and governments can track every single movement you make.
All right. That's so that just from one example that's only on WeChat. The rest of the examples here are from food delivery apps. On the upper right corner, you see Meituan Wanmai, Meituan for short. On the upper left corner of the slide, you see a DoorDash. Obviously, many people in the US have ordered that before. And then below that, Uber Eats. And then the company that's went public today, start public trading, Grab, that's dominant in Southeast Asia. What do they have in common? Well, they're all inspired by what Meituan has done. What is Meituan? The market cap is somewhere between 160 to 190 billion dollars, between which day of the year to this year you look at. The revenue is now over 10 billion US dollars, and it's the third largest tech company publicly traded in Asia. Its market cap is almost twice as big as Uber, and are only in China, whereas Uber is many places around the world. And its volume, the revenue is 3x of what DoorDash did in 2020. And also it has just grown dramatically over the last few years. And if you look at what Meituan app can do, these are all about, it seems to be busy, but each one of them has a very clear function. You can do a restaurant review, you can buy tickets for movies and different shows. You can use it for hotel booking. You can do it for other book karaoke, book stuff for takeout, buying tickets for your flights and for train, and then order for ride sharing. All of that is living in one app. So whereas WeChat is amazing for many daily functions, this is all about services. Any service you need, you can do it inside the Meituan app. So they also learn from WeChat, Tencent's investor in the company, by the way, and make sure that they can dominate the service category. Now, why does that matter? You look at Grab, what Grab has done from Southeast Asia. You can order bike rides, you can order make booking for entertainment, you can order food takeout, you can pay a transfer for transactions with your friends to share a bill. You can order grocery delivery, ride sharing as well, and doing investments. So Grab has learned from Meituan, learned from WeChat, learned from Alipay, and start doing something similar in Southeast Asia through Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines. So the benefits you saw in that video, which is 2016, now become more possible everywhere else in the world. Southeast Asia being one example. And this is DoorDash. We took the shots from their website, but these days, if you order online on their app, you see that it's not just for food delivery anymore. There's grocery, there's convenience stores, there are other things you can order. They're adding more and more categories as well. I just saw something around pets. So this has happened for DoorDash in 2021. We saw that in that video for China in 2016. So it took a bit of time, but the smart teams that are moving aggressively are adding similar features and daily conveniences that make sense for the local environment. And this is not just in the US or Southeast Asia or China. In India, Zomato, when popular earlier this year, has done amazingly well. So Zomato and Swiggy are the two biggest food delivery related apps, and there are super apps as well in India. Coupon just went public in the US. It's from South Korea originally, and has done extremely well as a super app, South Korea as well. Rappi and iFood are popular in Latin, Rappi everywhere outside of Brazil, and iFood is dominant in Brazil. So you start seeing these kind of learnings happening across the board. Hence, I said at the beginning of this presentation, the VCs are doing that themselves. You see Tiger Global, you see Coatue, you see HDB, Sequoia, they can invest globally and sharing the knowledge internally. Another example of super app is Alibaba's and financial group's Alipay app. And over here, you can see that there are ways to pay utility bills and do many other things on it, even test and track new COVID cases in your neighborhood. And you can use the money inside your Alipay account to make a lot of investments as well. You, of course, use Alipay pay for your transactions, e-commerce transactions on Taobao and Tmall and so forth. Again, it's a super app that deals with many different kind of investment and building related services. So all that makes life a lot more convenient instead of opening one app for a single purpose all the time and keep track of 20 different apps. Okay, talk about WeChat already. Before in Silicon Valley, it used to be that people want a single purpose app that's being very focused, but the smart operators, like for example, PayPal has made changes. They start trying apps that can have a direct consumer relationship. They bought Honey, which is a browser extension company that allows you to look at stuff you like to want to buy online and get rewards if you buy them. That has promotion attached to it. And then PayPal bought that because they have a lot of users globally. And also, PayPal decided to launch their own investment services in their own app. And the CEO, who comes from American Express, have said PayPal is going to become a super app, much in the same way that we have seen Alipay and WeChat doing that in the earlier slides and video. And they're not the only one who's doing that. We're an investor in Square, which owns a cash app. They bought Afterpay earlier this year as well. Again, all the things happened in 2021 during COVID. They bought Afterpay, which is buy now pay later app, which is from Australia. It's present here in the US and Europe. And the transactions is about 30 billion in US dollars in terms of transaction size. And afterwards, you can imagine that the cash app will be even more popular. Instead of just transferring money, you can use that to buy things and pay later as well. It's becoming a super app of its own. So it'll be interesting to see what Affirm and Klarna, two other players in buy now pay later space, do. Will they stay independent or will they be acquired? Both Affirm and Klarna have their own app that push products that you can buy now pay later onto the consumers themselves. I was an investor in Affirm. I have been an investor and still am an investor in Affirm since 2018. And it's just fun to talk to Max Levchin, who's a co-founder of PayPal and the CEO of Affirm, about his super app strategy and what the lessons he learned from looking at WeChat and Alipay and others around the world, and then apply that to Affirm. When I invested in Affirm did not have its own app. It was always just a buy now pay later option at the end of each e-commerce transaction. But over the last 2 years, they have launched their own app and have been extremely successful as well. So when we look at it, what is the future? On one end, you have iOS, Apple App Store, and Amazon. They're very vertically integrated. Everything you want to do with Apple, they want you to buy their iPad, they want to buy their iPhone, their iWatch. Everything's Apple. So it's completely vertically integrated. Everything works within that. Amazon wants to buy everything do everything on Amazon, from not just e-commerce shopping, but also video and everything as well. On the other end, as Amazon's doing that, and Amazon's now launching third-party merchants that sell well on them, that let brands sell on them as well. In addition, they also private label. If they see a product or brand is doing well, they have no problem going to the Chinese manufacturer directly and come up with a private label that's cheaper. And so some of the brands worry about that they cannot be as safe being on Amazon, even though it brings them a huge amount of volume. So whenever something like that happens, every platform is gonna be aggressive to grow their revenue. So you gotta wait to check on them. On the other end, you have the open platform, whether it's Android or Shopify, that power the local merchants, that power the local brands, and help them to protect themselves by being more independent. So in the US, you have this two extremes of being extremely open and being extremely close, and those two sort of substitute each other. What we're seeing is that in the middle, whether it's someone like a PayPal or a Cash App or DoorDash, are emerging right in the middle between these two ecosystems to form their own that's semi-close but also semi-open, so that they can do more and become differentiated from just being one of these two ecosystems. Not many people can make it as a super app, but the ones that do, you can see that there's a big potential because it does make life easier for users. And that's why it is so interesting. Without having seen what's happening in Asia, it's hard to have this kind of framework when we're looking at a purely US company. And many smart operators like Max Levchin at Affirm and those at Square Cash App are learning and adjusting to what's happening around the world. And that makes this world much more interesting and fun. Okay. Second lesson that's interesting to note from Asia is what is the future of shopping? And Asia has many innovation in e-commerce and makes it interesting for us to study and look at. One of which is a company, two companies I want to highlight. One is Pinduoduo, the other one is Shein. First one, Pinduoduo. How many of you have heard Pinduoduo before? Just out of curiosity. Okay, some do, most don't. In Pinduoduo, its market cap is 164 billion. Somewhere between 120 to 164 billion dollars these days, depending on which day of the year you're looking at. And the GMV they had last year is 250 billion US dollars. Number of annual active users is very high, almost close to 800 million. And there are more users who shop on Pinduoduo than on Alibaba and JD.com, which is scary for many people because Pinduoduo is a very young company that's only been around 2014, and Alibaba and JD have been around for a long time. And what is Pinduoduo? I'm showing you another video.
All right, today I'm gonna go over the user interface of Chinese app Pinduoduo, which has rose to become the #3 shopping app in China after Taobao and JD.com, and now has 300 million users. So when you open the app, you can see that there are some categories at the top, and here you can see a bunch of limited offers and deals you can participate in. And below, you can see these items that are recommended for you based on your past viewing behavior and your interest. So every user will actually see a different front page, similar to how Toutiao recommends views that's personalized to your interests. So Pinduoduo's founder used to be an engineer at Google, and Pinduoduo itself has 700 engineers, and 100 of them focus on algorithms, which are key to this recommendation engine. Now you might notice that there is no obvious search bar inside. There is a small search button here at the bottom, but it's kind of hidden, and that's on purpose. So unlike sites like Amazon, Taobao, or JD, where you go and search for an item that you have in mind, people usually go to Pinduoduo without a clear idea of what they want to buy, and they just browse for fun to kill time. So a lot of users are actually women living in lower tier cities, and many of them are housewives who happen to have a lot of free time on hand, and they would just use Pinduoduo for fun, just like how men like to play games. So the first thing to remember is that Pinduoduo is a browsing-centric product, not search-centric product. So let's say I want to buy some tissue paper for my house, and I click on this everyday goods category. By the way, tissue paper happens to be the best-selling item on Pinduoduo, and this particular brand of tissue paper has been sold 6.4 million times on the app. So at the bottom, you can see two prices. The one on the left, 18 RMB, is the price I get if I buy it by myself, and that's roughly $2.70 for 10 boxes of tissue paper, which is already dirt cheap. Or I can pay only 12 RMB and 90 cents if I buy it together with my friends, so we can all get a discount. And that's less than $2. And by the way, when you're on the app, you constantly see these little pop-up banners showing activities by other people, like so-and-so just bought some product. This creates the illusion that you're in a big shopping party and you're not alone, because the whole premise of Pinduoduo is social shopping. So let's say I want to buy this tissue paper with friends so we can all get a discount. So click on this party pinda, which means starter team. And I'll choose a size, I'll buy 10 packets, and confirm. So here you can see the default payment method is WeChat Pay. So I pay for this on WeChat. I might have made a payment successfully at a discounted price, but the transaction is not finished. The product will not be picked up and shipped to me until I share it with a friend who will buy it together with me. Now, Pinduoduo is urging me to share this with friends so we can all get a discount. So there are several ways I can share. One is I can just directly forward it to a WeChat friend, which is the most common method, or I can forward it to my QQ friends, or I can share on my QQ space, or I can have a friend right in front of me and they can scan a QR code on my phone, or I can generate a picture and send it to a friend. And here at the bottom, you can see I can even add an audio message that talks about why I recommend this product. So I may just add an audio message to describe this tissue paper. Hi, this is Zara. I really recommend this high quality tissue paper. Okay, now that message is recorded. Let me share it with my family. So as you can see here, Pinduoduo just generated a link for me within WeChat. And if my family clicks into it, they can listen to my voice message. Hi, this is Zara. I really recommend this high quality tissue paper. And here you can see I need one more friend to make this deal work. So one of them has to click on the buy button for me to get a discount. Let's say I don't have any friends, or I don't have friends whom I want to buy this tissue paper. Can I still get a discount? The answer is yes. As you can see here, there are 94 people who are trying to form a team for this particular product right now. And they all need one more key person in their team. So I can just join any of their teams if I don't want to share with a WeChat friend. So I join this person. And now you can see I instantly get my $12.90 price, which is a discounted price.
Okay. So that was Pinduoduo. We did that video back in 2018, right before Pinduoduo went public. Back then, they only had 300 million users. The number I just told you now, at the end of 2020, only 2 years later, it's up in close to 800 million. There's the growth speed, the speed of growth is phenomenal. And you can see why, because it's extremely social. If you've never used Pinduoduo before, you can be pinged by any of your WeChat friends to get you to want to do something. And that just the power of that virality is very interesting. And we saw a company similar to that in India in 2019, the company called Misho. Back then, the product was okay, wasn't as well thought out, and our colleagues in Asia thought that this team needs to do better at its product. And we end up not investing, but the growth they have had and the changes they made for the product over the last 2 years have been phenomenal. And now they are, as of October, globally #8 most downloaded apps. Most of them are in India, only India. But the growth they had in India just phenomenal. So you start seeing that these things work not just in one country, but it could be in multiple countries as well. And it's just fascinating how things are working out extremely interestingly across borders. And one of the things when I came back to the US from working in China, I moved from Silicon Valley to China in 2005. I was on the ground for 8 years. And that's when I invested in Meituan Dianping. That's when I invested in Xiaomi, as Professor Dasher mentioned. Then I moved back to the Bay Area in 2013 because I want to be a global investor by being based here in California, where I spent most of my life from college and now. And one of the first articles I wrote that was published on TechCrunch as a contributor was saying that if you want to beat Amazon, you want to know the next Amazon, be the next Amazon, you got to be cross-border from day one. But that's the way you can compete. You can leverage competitive advantage of nation in a way that's hard for any local team to outcompete you. And supposedly this is an article that Jeff Bezos saw, shared a lot internally within Amazon leadership. And Amazon had a lot more merchants from Asia, specifically China, over the next 2 or 3 years, because they know they don't want to be undercut from anyone from behind. And so just interesting how everyone is learning, being aware where the disruption could happen anywhere around the globe. And another app I'm going to talk to you about is Shein. Before that, Shopee is another interesting app. How many of you have heard Shopee before? Some of you have, but most have not. Shopee belongs to a company called SEA. The CEO, Forrest, is also from Stanford, GSD alum, very active donor to Stanford. And Forrest Li is from China originally, came to US, came to Stanford GSD, met his wife here, and his wife is also Chinese, but grew up in Singapore. So they end up going back to Singapore in 2008, 2009 time period. And he thought, what should he do living in Singapore? Well, since China has Tencent and Alibaba, one's great in gaming, another one's great in e-commerce, he thought he'd replicate that in Singapore. So the first company he started is called Garena, which has become a very popular mobile gaming company and very profitable. Started in Southeast Asia first, and then expanded into LATAM in 2018 and started doing very well in LATAM. The second unit they started within C is Shopee. It's an e-commerce app, looks similar to Taobao from China, C2C app that is popular not only in Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and so forth, but also popular in Taiwan. It has recently, at the beginning of this year, late last year, expanded into LATAM, and now the second half of this year, expanded into Europe, starting with Spain. So these apps are just growing dramatically, and you see where they are in those countries. You also see Shein. How many of you have heard Shein before? Shein. It is probably amongst the most popular Gen Z apparel brand in the US now, not elsewhere in the world, in the US. It is very popular on TikTok, and we'll chat a bit about them. But you see Shein and Shopee being quite popular throughout Southeast Asia, and it's just interesting. How many of you heard Singles Day before? We all know Black Friday is Cyber Monday, but Singles Day is the biggest shopping day ever in the history of mankind. Over 20, 30, $40 billion gets transacted in one day, because Alibaba started it almost 10 years ago, and JD.com, and back then was the second largest e-commerce company in China, followed suit, and now it becomes a phenomenon not only in China, but also elsewhere. On the right, the image is not very clear, is Kim Kardashian. She was a star of the Alibaba Singles Day, big day shopping spree. The reason it's called Singles Day is that they picked the day, November 11th. There's Valentine's, and there are Chinese Valentines and the Western Valentines. But if you are towards the end of the year, you're alone, it's kind of sad, you can shop, make yourself feel better. That's why it's called November 11th. It's, people not connecting, so you're singles. That's why it's called Singles Day. And it's just so fun to see it become a big showcase. There's a war room in Hangzhou, in Alibaba headquarters, and just see transactions happening online. It shows you how many transactions are done on a per second basis. Guess how many transactions are transacted per second? About a million transactions per second gets transacted. It's going so fast. It's amazing, and the whole place gets excited because it flashes what's being sold now and what's selling well. So if throughout the whole day, you just can get a lot of data flashing on the big screen, and you have stars from China, from US, from elsewhere come in and promote the product that they like. So it becomes a big, huge festival, and it's just extremely interesting when you see that happens. And obviously Shopee and others also learn from that and have their Singles Day activity as well. So again, best practice gets inspired and adapted elsewhere too. Okay, and some people tell me, well, the Chinese company doing so well, they can expand and take over the world. Actually, not really. It's the ones that knows how to learn quicker, faster, and adapt locally quicker, faster wins. C is from Singapore, and they're beating Lazada, which is a company that was acquired by Alibaba. And you can tell since the acquisition, Lazada hasn't done as well. It's just not easy to localize. And when C went into Indonesia, a lot of people thought that the local player, Tokopedia, would do extremely well. And then you see that C, just because they have great learning on what works in other Southeast Asian countries, apply that to Southeast Asia into Indonesia, and leverage the profit they're generating like a cash cow from Garena to pump it into C and heavily discount their goods. So they've been very effective in Indonesia as a result, to the point that I feel comfortable to expand into LATAM. So we don't know the local champion will definitely win, or if the foreign big player will win for sure. All we know is that the team that learn quickly, know what's going on around the world, and they quickly can adapt locally, got to be able to do both and be nimble. Those are the teams that end up winning. This is the market cap of C. When they went public in 2017, all the way to 2020, the market cap did not change that much. Over the course of COVID, they aggressively expanded into LATAM, and then the market cap almost went 8x during that time frame. It's just amazing how fast these companies can grow when they get it right. These are the top shopping apps in the US. The number one is Amazon for sure. Number two is an app that many people don't know about called Shein, which I'll talk about a bit in a second. I'm also an investor in OfferUp, Poshmark, and Wish, and it's just very interesting to see how these apps move up and down in these charts. This is a sort of snapshot of Shein. I don't have a video on them. They're extremely secretive. But if you go to Amazon, you click look for Shein, you see their store on Amazon. And the photos they have are what you see here. You cannot tell from the photos that it is a company from China. everything you see is the style is slightly different. It seems a bit more exciting and busier than an American company, but the model and the everything you see is seems quite localized. And it's amazing when you hashtag Shein on TikTok. There are close to 7 billion views worldwide on Shein. Why is it? On Facebook and Instagram together, they have 40 million followers. And they have about 70,000 affiliate influencers who will work with them and gets a cut for promoting their product. You see this time-based shopping thing, very similar to Pinduoduo. So they took ideas from other apps that are doing well and then incorporate into it. But what is Shein? Shein, you can think of like a Zara on steroids. Zara beat Gap about 15 years ago, and the reason they can beat Gap is that they can carry more SKUs than Gap does, and they change them around quickly. So within a period of 1 to 2 months, and you see different things in the Zara store, and it becomes exciting going to Zara because you always see something new coming out, and the pricing is very affordable, $40. Then you switch over to Shein. They actually can carry 3 to 4 times the number of SKUs of Zara, and they test their SKU, what works, what doesn't work, faster than Zara does. Because Zara, you have to go to a store and get feedback. Shein is online, so they have their own website, their own app, they have their own store on Amazon. So they get feedback from user, what's working, what's not working very quickly. And they have an IT system set up to be backward integrated with any manufacturers who work with them. And so all the information is shared over the cloud in a secure way. And they know the manufacturer know exactly what Shein wants to do when they want to reorder and find out the model that's working. These manufacturers are willing to ship it, make them and ship it immediately. Usually in apparel, it takes 6 months of planning and ordering in advance. Zara made it possible by working with their partners to cut it down to 2-3 months. And Shein has made it work to an average of 2 weeks or less. And any manufacturer who want to join them has to be extremely flexible, be willing to adjust. If you're willing to adjust, they can pay you quicker, faster as well, because they get paid from the user quickly, immediately through a payment method online, and they can pay their manufacturer quicker as well. So manufacturers actually save money, even though they can take a discount to work with Shein to get paid quicker. So they actually have less money tied up in working capital, and therefore they can be a more efficient operation by working with Shein. And the average price point, $3 to $8. I mean, $4 is already a great price. $3 is a steal. So it's not surprising that you can see a lot of Gen Z young consumers loving it because they can buy a lot more. They have smaller disposable income, whether it's from parents or something they make on their own. And when they have it, and when they use it very smartly, and when you can buy for something like for $3 to $8 on Shein and it's decent quality, as good as Zara, if not better, it makes you feel good that you have a great steal and you enjoy shopping even more. Okay, I'm going to take some lessons, sharing some lessons from hard work. Apple and Tesla obviously are the best at what they do in terms of making smartphones and EV cars. They pioneer the market and they're basically trailblazers. So what can you do differently to differentiate yourself and compete? These are, let's see if I can play this. I guess not. This is the general manager for Xiaomi in India. And he has figured out a way to localize. He has posted many videos on his LinkedIn profile. Each one of them is a very localized way of sharing why the Xiaomi phone is interesting for a particular festival or particular occasion. And he has, every time he posts, I always see like thousands, if not tens of thousands of people liking his video. When he does that, they can bump them up so even more people see it because it's a popular video and they can want more people to see that video. And so by the way he does it, he ends up helping Xiaomi to become a dominant player in India. Many people don't know this. In India is probably iPhone's toughest market because the Indian consumers are extremely savvy Why am I paying $500, $600 for a phone? I can get it for $100. The specs are similar, and why should I pay so much for the brand when the phone works, almost equally well? And so as a result, a lot of people watch his videos and end up buying as a result of that. And the fact that Xiaomi video is available on Flipkart makes it very easy and comfortable for Indian consumers to buy it. And now Xiaomi entered the India market in 2014. By 2018, 4 years later, it become the #1 phone brand in India. So it's not Samsung, it's not iPhone, but it's Xiaomi. And it's just kind of very interesting to see them be able to localize that brand and be able to, through word of mouth, without spending much money on marketing to get there. I asked him how much money did he spend to get from 2014 to 2018 to be #1 in the #1 phone brand in India. He didn't want to say, but it's extremely small amount of money. So it is very interesting to see how through being active on TikTok, being active on LinkedIn, being active on social media in India, that he can build a huge following with a localized offering, with a localized presentation, and be able to get people to feel like this is something that's trustworthy, interesting, cool, cheap, but very high quality. A lot of people think that Tesla don't have a competitor today, even though they are existing OEMs catching up. Porsche has a very good product in EV. Volvo has come out their version earlier this year, about a couple months ago. Mercedes-Benz and Audi have said they're going to come out next year, but Tesla doesn't seem like they're be afraid of them because they feel that they can move faster than the existing auto players. We'll see. Existing auto players all feel they have a better quality of product, but they don't have the fan and the following of Tesla. I don't have a Tesla yet. I'm trying to convince my wife to let me buy one. But it's interesting to see some of our neighbors telling her that, hey, Tesla car is so sought after. Even if someone drive it for 2-3 years, they want to resell it. They actually resell the higher value, especially during COVID, because there's the shortage of cars, shortage of chips. So you got a good Tesla car, you actually sell it more after using it for 3-4 years for higher price than you paid for. That's how valuable it is. And it's all based on the community of fans and users who use the product, like it, believe in it, and therefore will continue to want more of it. And this is what I saw with Xiaomi as well. When I first had a Xiaomi phone, and I took around to a local barbershop in Shanghai to get a haircut. It's back in late 2011, early 2012, and the barber had never seen the Xiaomi phone before, and so he come up to me and asked me what it is, and I was trying to explain to it. But before I can even talk about it for more than 2 sentences, the smartest guy in that barbershop, because all the barbers there, who's the most internet savvy, IT savvy, said, "Oh, I know what it is. That's a Xiaomi phone. It's the newest thing that came out just a month ago. 450,000 people wanted it in the first 24 hours." He knew the stats by heart. So all the other barbers were very impressed. Everybody started congregating around me, wanted to see what it is. So within that, 5 seconds, he, not me, helped to sell the other 6 people just like that at zero cost of marketing. So that kind of ability to get fans who love you, whether it's Tesla or Xiaomi, and you want to share about it, that's the secret of virality, that you don't need a lot of marketing dollars. This is what traditional brands don't understand. And leveraging social media and word of mouth effect, just a lot of people start to realize that this is something that should be cool. And we see that similarly with TikTok. We see that similarly with Shein as well. And this is one of the GE portfolio company called Xpeng Auto. Wall Street Journal has an interesting video on them, which I will share.
Driving today might feel like you're using a tech gadget, especially if it's a car developed by Chinese automaker Xpeng. First, you'll need your phone to activate the features.
And we need to scan it.
Then you'll give commands.
打开主驾车窗。
When you get to your destination, the vehicle will park itself.
找到车位。
These features are all part of Xpeng's strategy to stand out in the world's second biggest market for electric vehicles. The company is competing in China not only with EV leaders like Tesla,
the all-electric F-150 Lightning.
but also traditional automakers like Ford and GM, which are doubling down on producing electric vehicles too.
Technology combined with mobility and auto is where we think the future is going to be.
One high-tech feature automakers are racing to build, full self-driving capabilities. But putting more tech in vehicles creates engineering challenges and also risky behaviors. Like Tesla, XPeng is trying to push the boundaries of integrating tech into our cars and has gotten into a spat with Elon Musk over software. So we went to XPeng's R&D lab to understand its vision for driving.
We have worked out a very unique culture and capability that allows us to rapidly innovate. We'll be able to be one of the top players in China.
XPeng has always operated like a tech startup since it was founded in 2014.
We have a lot of traditional auto background employees. At the same time, we have staff coming from leading technology companies.
Brian Gu is a former JP Morgan executive who took over as XPeng's vice chairman and president in 2018.
We actually dedicate close to 40% of our staff in the R&D area in software. So I think that's very different compared to traditional auto companies.
Gu was the man behind XPeng's IPO on the New York Stock Exchange last year that raised $1.7 billion. Using this money, XPeng hired more engineers and poached talent from China's top tech companies like Tencent and Alibaba. And one of the big goals for this larger engineering team is to develop self-driving technology. Currently, XPeng offers what it calls advanced driver assistance systems. This controls the car on a highway, but you have to keep your hands on the steering wheel. In 5 years, XPeng's goal is to develop a fully autonomous vehicle that doesn't need anyone in the seat. To make this happen, it's invested a lot in software and hardware.
We are keeping basically investment in autonomous driving as our number one priority.
Xunzhou Wu leads XPeng's autonomous driving division. Its software decides when the car should accelerate or brake, and that relies on information that comes from a vast array of sensors. Plus, the most recent XPeng cars are going to be equipped with a special piece of hardware called LiDAR, which uses light waves to map what's around.
The LiDAR can do a range calculation to get a kind of a 3D world view. We can make autonomous driving in the city safer.
LiDAR is expensive, typically costing about $1,000 a piece, and XPeng's latest car will take 2. The company will be the first automaker to mass produce LiDAR-equipped vehicles this year, and its entry point will be lower than $35,000. But XPeng's tech strategy has some big detractors.
LiDAR is a fool's errand. Expensive sensors that are unnecessary.
Tesla is taking a different approach and instead investing in software that can interpret what's on the road using only regular cameras.
Tesla has very much tried to do self-driving on the cheap, with the bare minimum number of sensors that they think they can get away with.
Sam Abul-Samad is an auto analyst who's been analyzing EV tech features for the past 10 years. During a recent road test of EV self-driving capabilities, Tesla came in first by a big margin. But Abul-Samad says XPeng's system has more potential because of its hardware.
With the right software, you can do distance measurement, but it's never going to be as accurate or as reliable as what you could do with active sensors like LiDAR.
A lot of sensors and cameras potentially mean the self-driving software is receiving more useful information about what's on the road. Just compare XPeng's 32 sensors in its latest sedan to the 12 sensors and 8 cameras in a Tesla vehicle. Tesla didn't respond to a request for comment, but Musk has tweeted several times that its camera-based system is more precise than sensors like LiDAR. But the Tesla and XPeng rivalry goes beyond choice of hardware. It all came to a head when Tesla filed a lawsuit in 2019 against one of its former employees in the US who had quit to join XPeng. The lawsuit alleged that he took copies of the source code of Tesla's current driver assistance system in order to hand it over to his new employer. In court documents, Tesla alleged the Chinese company was inspired by and on a mission to beat Tesla, and has transparently imitated Tesla's design, technology, and even its business model. In April, Tesla settled the lawsuit with the former employee, who acknowledged he shouldn't have saved the source code, but said he didn't provide it to XPeng. XPeng said the engineer no longer works for the company, and that its in-house developed R&D has been its competitive advantage.
I view Tesla as our partner rather than competitor. Tesla never brought that claim against our company, which means that there is no evidence to point any wrongdoing
But if there's one challenge that the two rivals are facing together, it's the uphill battle with the public perception of their prized tech.
There's a growing sense that the driver assistance systems that they have, the capabilities have been oversold.
Edward Niedermeyer is an industry observer who pushes for self-driving technology as a way to make roads safer.
Okay, Tesla, let's get this trip started.
But he says social media videos showing some drivers operating a Tesla from the back seat shows how dangerous these systems can be when people are not using them properly.
There's considerable research that shows us people are much more likely to misuse those systems if they overestimate their capability.
Tesla has repeatedly said the features it offers make driving safer. Meanwhile, XPeng is working on a driver's test, acknowledging that its self-driving system has limitations.
For our drivers to be able to unlock the autonomous driving features, they actually need to take a test. We also need to educate the drivers how to properly use those technologies.
So while XPeng hones its self-driving capabilities, engineers are beefing up other tech features like its voice recognition system, or making its battery management software super efficient. XPeng has already started selling cars in Norway and says these tweaks will help it crack the larger Europe market. And someday, the company plans to have its cars on US roads, right alongside Tesla vehicles.
So interesting. I know we are probably up on time, so I want to make sure that I give people a chance to ask questions. I was going to talk about TikTok next. I was earning investing Musical.ly, helped to sell a company to ByteDance, and then ByteDance combined TikTok and Musical.ly into one. And during COVID, everyone knows that TikTok becomes extremely popular worldwide. So it was fun to see how they expanded. So whether it's TikTok, whether it's Shein, seeing them happening in the US was mind-boggling. I didn't think that during my lifetime I would see a brand, a startup from China be able to build products for the US market. And also didn't expect that someone like Oyo would expand beyond India to worldwide, and or Shopee would expand into Southeast Asia, into Latin and Europe. So the world become a lot richer and more interesting as a result. And when I have conversations with folks like Brian Chesky from Airbnb, or Max Lefchin from Affirm, or Scott Cutler from StockX, it's just fun to be able to talk about what's happening in the world that could be interesting and relevant to them, and vice versa. So it makes my job and my life much more interesting and richer as a result. But fundamentally, what people are not getting is that the Gen Z consumers are extremely agile and smart and savvy. My kids look at me and goes, Dad, you only have like 20,000 followers on Twitter. What's wrong with you? And like, I'm looking at this video has 1 million views. How many people view your videos or listen to your podcast? So they're very savvy at using a variety of things. And the companies that know how to tailor to Gen Z and the younger millennials have done extremely well. And those are the companies that, as consumer play, continue to stay ahead of their competitor. So instead of picking lessons from East versus West or US versus China, what I've learned over the last 8 years of being back in the US is that the world's much richer when we can learn from one another and figure out what are the things that make sense for you, for your target user. And usually the ones that understand how to go after a mass market, how to have services that can be more frequently used and touched by user, to go after the younger Gen Z consumers, end up doing much better as a result. And super apps definitely a big part of that strategy. So with that, that's it from me, and happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Hans, thank you for this great presentation. I think that the 4 lessons that you were able to present about the super apps and about mass consumer adoption, about how to differentiate yourself despite the fact that there are already strong players here in other markets. And finally, this point about virality and personalization are great. Why don't I ask you to stop sharing your slides right now? And I do want to mention to everybody in the room that we'd like to ask you to put your questions in chat for this part of the program while we're still online and recording. That will help us get to as many questions as we can. So please put your questions in chat. I have a couple. The first question that I'd like to ask is about the what the super apps are doing to other startup company innovation in the Western markets. So growing companies all seem to want to become platform companies at some point. And at least with the really successful platforms, you can argue that they've facilitated the creation of a lot of apps on top of these platforms, even if you get platform dependent startups. But the super apps would seem to create a bigger and bigger zone of death around the giant companies that would actually make it harder to come up with new startup companies. What do you see about that in the future?
Yeah, I think that's a very legitimate question and people do think about it. But the reality is that it is very difficult to come up with a super app. You look at in the US, Amazon, Google, Facebook, the Facebook bot, WhatsApp bot, Instagram. Besides TikTok and DoorDash, and arguably Snap, you haven't seen a lot of new apps that can get to that level. And either one of them, all three of them, whether it's DoorDash or Snap or TikTok, they were not as affected by Facebook, by Google, or Amazon. And so while it is, one could argue in theory that these super apps will make it tougher for other startups to emerge, the super apps have emerged despite the earlier super apps. You can argue that Uber wanted to be a super app, and everyone thought that Uber had a chance to beat DoorDash, but DoorDash out-executed Uber fair and square. So it is not easy to build a successful super app, but I wouldn't attribute it to because the large apps made it tougher for other people to compete. And second point would be that I remember Musical.ly was available to be acquired by Facebook or Google. Any one of them could have bought Musical.ly, and the founders actually had a preference for US acquired to buy them and take them more global. And nobody in Silicon Valley was interested. So I highly encouraged them to sell to ByteDance because I just thought that ByteDance wanted to go global. And by working with Musical.ly, they can have an interesting combination and ends up being successful. But it wasn't because I favored ByteDance. No one else in the US wanted it. So a lot of it is still based on whether the executive in position to make those decisions, make the right decision, make the right call now. And that's what's making this job so interesting for both the founders and for VCs, because hindsight is always 20/20, or of course that became the case. By the time making decisions, it's not easy at all.
Okay, and this leads to my second question, and then I'll move to audience questions. The second point really has to do with the learning that you have to do in order to be able to either grow a super app or to grow globally. And your point about going global from day one is something that I really would love to support. That's one of the reasons we're doing what we're doing. But the learning you have to do to deal with incredibly different market preferences, different infrastructures, different regulatory systems. How have the companies that have done really well across Asia managed to do that?
Right. Most apps Asia that have gone global have not succeeded, to be honest. The ones that you've seen that succeeding, whether it's Shopee, whether it's Misho, whether it's Shein, are more exception to the rule. And the ones that have made it work have figured out a way to somehow localize better, learn faster, and hire other people who have done it to join them to be able to make that work. So it is through a lot of hard work and fast iteration, through a lot of trial and error to learn quickly on what to do. That's why even though we talk about super apps a lot, there are not more than 20 super apps in the world for a reason.
Okay, that makes good sense. From the audience, we have a quick question about you yourself. Charlotte sees the business books on your bookshelf and wonders how many business books are you reading? Is it really important to keep reading the books?
Sure, I try to read business books, but actually I don't read as many as people may think. The reason is that just by being the job we're in, reading what's happening and meeting companies in our space, you see what's happening already. There are not a lot of new concepts that that one needs to build these interesting companies. When I look at the companies that are succeeding and the variations that they have, basically they're all trying to figure out how to become a product or service that bottom half of the pyramid or bottom 70% of the pyramid can use. You can start at all stuff at the top, like a Peloton or iPhone or Tesla, but over time you're starting to figure out how to become more relevant to a larger audience. If Peloton didn't have a firm to buy now pay later with, who will buy a $2,000 bike? Who can afford it upfront? They need to buy now pay later spread over 39 months. So figuring out ways to make something more addressable over time, whether coming from the top or going after mass market from day one, are things that I just know you have to do, regardless of what business book I read. Second thing is that how do you increase your frequency with interaction with the users, so people will use it on a daily basis, if not on an hourly basis. So constantly think about how to do that. Why should you be around, and why should you? How should you get people to introduce our service to other friends? Are things that we constantly spend time thinking about. And the thirdly is how do you become a way to leverage, collect these data and use that data to train your algorithm to come up with better recommendation that's more relevant and personalized. At the same time, with the data you have, how do you leverage that to make better lending decisions, whether it's to consumers or to the sellers on your platform? So they are kind of set things that you can do that you should try to figure out. As someone present an idea to you or startup, where are they coming from? And eventually they still have to get most of these goals to make it work. So I can read a lot of business books, but it doesn't tell me more than the basics I need to know to quickly figure out what does it take for this company to scale over time. So after you do this for a while, you see the patterns. It's very clear when I talk to someone which angle they're going after and how can they be bigger over a period of time.
Thank you. That's a really interesting answer. We got a couple of questions about specific domains or specific sectors. And you've been talking about mass consumer things that have a number of different functions or different embedded in the super app or whatever. But how do you see things like education or like healthcare in regard to lessons we can get from Asia, models for how to go global or how to go international?
Yeah, we are investing last year in Europe that come out with a VR-based solution to help people to learn how to do their last experiments in the classrooms better, more efficiently. So it's a solution provided by the schools to the students that allow them to try and test more things than they ever can based on limitations of a physical lab, which is extremely expensive. And we also see that company like Baiju out of India, Vedantu out of India, that's made a lot easier for people not in the big city to get quality education and lots of training after school to be better at test prep and understanding the materials that are covered in school. Having said that, we're looking for edtech companies that can be a lot more social and help people to learn coding better and get feedback faster and so forth. There are companies like that in China that have been affected by regulation. So you can see other companies around the world try to learn those lessons and apply it. So I think there's just tons of things to do in edtech on coding, on the basic curriculum covered in K-12, as well as interesting hobbies and arts and music and so forth. So I still think that we're at a sort of early stage of edtech, with more coming. I'm a personal investor in Color Health, which provides COVID-19 testings and other things with Stanford, with Harvard, and so forth. And they're in 1/3 of the states in the US already doing that with the state local government, and figure out a way to partner with schools and churches to be able to provide those tests as well, starting with COVID, but other flus and type of flus and STDs in the future. So it's just very interesting to see, because of COVID, there's so many more things possible in digital health than before. I'm on the board of K-Health, that's providing primary care and specialty care through voice and other means. And so you see companies like Livongo getting public and acquired. And so it just becomes so much possible in healthcare and digital health than ever before. There's still a lot of regulation, but a lot more people will be willing to try something different because of COVID. So COVID is terrible for many people around the world, but it also become a huge booster and accelerator of adoption of anything that's digital, that's mobile internet related. So that's been extremely exciting to see changes happen.
I wonder if this next question is going to relate to that. This has to do with your own kind of process of investment. To be a global investor means that you're looking at companies anywhere in the world when you see a really good opportunity. But venture capital investing used to be local. People really wanted to know a lot about the company that they were getting involved with. What's your process? How long do you spend studying a startup before you decide to invest on it?
Yeah, we don't do anything by ourselves. We have a great team. So we have different people focus on different aspects. Some people focus on enterprise market. Some people focus on consumer and smart tech. So everyone has their specialty. So by focusing on things that we know best, we try to leverage that to apply to many different geographies. So once you have been in a sector for a long time, you accumulate more knowledge about what works in the sector. So when talking to a new founder, you can immediately get a sense whether this person knows what they're talking about or not. And you may, in one meeting, you have some sense, but you have 2, 3, 4 meetings, then you have much better sense because it's hard to come up with something new every single time. The founder really has to know that domain extremely well to be able to carry it much deeper conversations over a period of time. And for us, when we find founders who know much more than we do, that's when we know that based on knowledge we have internally, globally, we still meet this founder who's amazing. For example, the founder of facility in Brazil, he's Brazilian, but he can he knows the business model of studying in China even better than some of the Chinese team members that we know, and he can have the perfect pronunciation of every single one of the Chinese player as a Brazilian. So it is impressive the kind of how smart some of these founders are, and that just makes it the life much more interesting as a result. And then we have younger investment team professionals who read a lot of books. I don't have the thing to do that because over a 20-year period, you see a lot of great companies. You know how they can scale. But I found it very interesting to see younger MBAs and people out of college who are spending time reading the biographies of great companies on Amazon, on Facebook, on Google, on finding anything they can get their hands on online about DoorDash, about Meituan, about Xiaomi, and so forth. The more people read about these specific companies, they start picking up patterns on their own. And to the extent that I had to live through many of these, but when I see younger team members who can learn from reading these books and getting it faster and faster, I find it extremely impressive that I can learn so quickly.
Okay, I've got several questions from Changpei. I'm going to shorten them and may have to omit one. What did C get right, SEA? Why were they so successful compared to, Lazada or Tokopedia?
I think that for C is they understood what was happening in China, what made Taobao and Tencent different. They also understood that they need you cannot be local in every Southeast Asian countries. So they figure out a way to build a team beyond the initial gaming team that did well, but went out and recruit Chris Feng from Lazada to join them to run Shopee. And Chris worked at Lazada before, grew up in Singapore, even though he's mainland Chinese by birth. He understood what Lazada did well and not well. He understood what he was competing against. So he was able to exploit the competitor's weakness and accentuate what they do better. And definitely does help to have a gaming business throwing out cash to be able to subsidize the discount they have to incur. And so they understood that heavy discount, get users engaged, have them shop frequently, develop a habit and trust in the Shopee brand, and then upsell more products and services to them over time. And Grab does that extremely well as well, and beat Gojek in Indonesia and become a dominant player in Southeast Asia. And they're profitable everywhere outside of Indonesia as well. So it is very interesting to see these companies all learn from what's working elsewhere and then be able to adapt locally extremely more efficiently than the competitor. So the number one quality we look for in a founder is ability to learn.
So I'm going to kind of change around one of Changpei's other questions and ask you, you mentioned that there's about 20 super apps, and that's probably plenty. Do you think there'll be further consolidation? Will it drop down to 6 or 7 worldwide?
Sorry, say that again?
Do you think that the number of super apps is going to shrink? Will it consolidate? Will it drop down to 6 or 7 worldwide?
I don't think so. I think that each of the, what makes the world interesting is that China, US, Latin, Europe, Southeast Asia, India, Africa, and even Middle East, each one is big enough that you will see at least 1, 2, 3 super apps in each of those regions. That makes life much more interesting than before. Can you see acquisition across board? Maybe, because there's so much capital out there, whether it's a public investing or VC, that there's enough money to support the growth of a local app to emerge. Even South Korea, nobody thought South Korea would be big enough to have many super apps, but you see Line, you see KakaoTalk, you see Coupon, and it's just fascinating, and there's more coming. So that makes the world, it doesn't always converge into just one, and that's why a more multipolar, diverse world is much better for everyone.
So we have a couple of people who've asked about kind of US-China friction. It's been kind of a turbulent year for the last few years. What do you see ahead in 2022? And do you think that TikTok is going to get shut down, or Shein is going to get shut down in the US?
We will see. No one has a crystal ball. No one knows for sure. But definitely, the behavior of both the governments have not made it easy to navigate. This is why, by being in the US, I don't invest in China myself anymore. We have colleagues in China who do invest in China, but I focus my energy on US, Latin America, and India as well.
Okay. What do you say about climate change, sustainability, those kinds of issues as things that may either motivate investment or may be problems coming from existing investments?
I think that there's so much money has gone into climate change and clean tech since 2008. Some of those investments for others who have made those investments, we have not, are starting to work out. So I think there's hope on that category for investments. We made a lot of investments in food tech over the last 3 years, because we believe that that's a category within sustainability that we understand better and feel that they're the right founders and teams for us to invest. One of the companies that we invested on in New York is a company called Bowery Farming. They do indoor vertical farming, and the first thing they work on are green things that they want to grow in-house, and they can harvest 12 times a year. This is only 2-3 times a year in the real world. And so I've seen them grow from a company that we co-invested Series A investment in 50 million pre to now over 2 billion valuation, and the stuff is working. It took them a while to get there, but it's an amazing team that's doing something that we think that you start to see Bowery Farm as a brand that's emerging in many grocery stores around the country. And so another company we invested is out of Singapore that's doing plant-based chicken, and it tastes amazingly well. And they launched in New York, and it's getting a lot of publicity from famous chefs to have them because it's healthier and tastes well in their restaurants. So you're seeing things emerging that are within different buckets of sustainability, which could be interesting, which could be greener, but there's more work to be done. It is a serious matter, and I think you're going to see a lot more money invested into this category over the next 10 years.
Thanks. And Paulo, who is calling in from Recife, Brazil, asks about kind of security and hacking in the super app situation. Do you think that the security is actually better for the super app model than it is for, say, an integrated model where you've got one platform and then other companies are the sort of service providers on top of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not an expert on cybersecurity, but we have a team that does that, make investments in it. Because of super app and sort of API-based economy is out there. This is why there's a greater need for better cybersecurity solutions to keep up and to offer similar kind of quality that a integrated app would. So when you're open, you're more susceptible to attacks, and that brings the new industry emerging to make sure that the experience and the protection can be comparable to something that's closed loop. If there's no Amazon, why would anybody buy from Shopify? So you have that closed system exist that's supposed to be better for a limited amount of people. That's why you have an open system emerging to try to replicate as much as possible. And in between, you're going to see a few more super apps emerging that try to take be the best of both worlds in some way. And again, that makes life much more interesting. So when you're looking at that framework, it's easier to look at based on the competitive dynamics of each of the sector, what is likely to emerge and what will be a counterweight to whoever's winning. So it's almost like, as a historian, I love the romance of the three kingdoms. It's always fun when 2-3 players emerging and who's going to be picking up each other, who's going to team up with the other to be the whoever's number one. Not dynamics. It's just so much fun. And for someone who loves reading history since you're young, you just intuitively know what's going to happen next.
So this kind of brings up, talking about security and other kinds of things. The giant markets are the B2C markets. How do you see B2B over the next few years, moving in Asia and back to here?
Yeah, and what we have seen over the past 2 years is that B2B is emerging in a big way. We're led our investment in Udang in India, and it's an ex-Flipkart team. Why do we work on B2B? Because in India, GDP per capita is lower, less than just below $2,000. And in China, we saw that when GDP per capita nominally is between 3,000 to 4,000, that's when e-commerce started to take off. You don't have disposable income to buy a lot of goods. And so when they're doing Flipkart, they're more limited in finding a smaller number of cities that they can sell to without a higher disposable income. But by providing B2B service to help local mom and pops, Kirana stores to be more efficient and source better and cut out the middleman, they actually ends up treating all these SMBs as you would an individual consumer, in China with higher GDP per capita. So small B2B becomes a better way to build a B2C like business in emerging markets where GDP per capita starting to catch up. And even in places like Southeast Asia or Latin, we're seeing B2B players emerging. That's very interesting. We're an investor. I'm on the board of Frubana out of Bogota, that's in Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil, that help restaurants source everything they need. In the US, using the Excur team going after B2B market as well in the form of Fair. So B2B, I think that over the next 10 years, will have bigger growth than B2C, just because many people have smartphones already. E-commerce penetration is already relatively reasonable. You may see a 3-4x growth on e-commerce, but B2B is just emerging, and it will have bigger multiple over the next 10 years. Both will be big and massive. Just that B2B coming from a smaller base will grow even faster.
Thanks. Elisa, who is calling in from Taipei, says that Foxconn has started an industry alliance called MIH to build the Android of the electric vehicle. What do you think about this, and what about existing basically phone makers moving into EVs?
Xiaomi has made an announcement as well, so I think you're going to see more phone maker or manufacturer come up with EV cars. I think when you have a product that interacts directly with the consumer, it's not just about what you're building, but also how do you take feedback from these consumers. That's the best sort of consumer company that we have invested in or grew up with tend to be the ones that will listen to consumers extremely well and adapt very quickly. Consumers are forgiving. They complain a lot, but they are forgiving. If you make mistakes and fix them quickly, they will reward you. So it is different than just building a product for a big brand with a long sort of turnaround cycle. It has got to be very nimble, be very humble, listen to what users are telling you, and be able to fix very quickly. So it's a different kind of skill set. So I think the consumer companies that can do that well, that listen well, respond quickly, and get users turn them from someone who hates your product to someone who are raved by your product. Teams that can do that will end up winning much bigger, and that's not something that's obvious to a lot of manufacturers. So whoever can learn that lesson well will end up doing much better.
Okay. Okay, great. So we're about out of time for the formal part of the program. If you can stay for a few minutes, we'll do some things off the record after we turn off the recording. But
Sure.
first, I really want to tell you that you've hit two of the themes that are really at the heart of why we are doing what we are doing ever since 1992. One is to pay attention to innovations from Asia, because even if it looks like they started as copycats to the US, they may have moved ahead. And you've given great examples of how things have moved ahead and really now can stimulate even more innovation back here. The second point is global. You must think global in this digital world. And I think that, being able to make GGV Capital into a very successful global venture capital firm is a remarkable accomplishment and something I'm really glad that we could get your perspectives uh, for our audience today. We'll have this up on YouTube on our channel. I think maybe it'll go to your Next Billion podcast.
That's right.
And so we will continue that, but for anybody who can, please stay a little bit longer and we'll have some off the record conversation that will not be recorded. Before we turn off the recording, I want to thank every single person who watched session today and who've watched any of the sessions in our series this quarter. It's because of your interest that we keep doing this, and you've contributed a great deal through your questions and comments through the quarter. We hope we'll do this again. We'll do a series on entrepreneurship in Asian high-tech industries in spring, and we'll do our next program in this series on international technology management from next September. Thanks, everybody.